Hi, welcome to this lecture. Now we want to use another scalar function in order to try and map a certain variable to the size aesthetics. Now let us start with these scatterplots for demonstration purposes. Now let's say, and then now we are talking about the displacement and miles per gallon. Now let's say we want to take this size, and now we want to size the points based on the horsepower. So if we run this, now this here is the resulting scatter plot, because you can see we have managed to map the size of the points to the HP variable, which represents the horsepower. The following thing that you want to do is, we of course want to start by changing the name. So if we come in here and say scale underscore size, and now we specify continuous. Remember that this here is a continuous variable, so we'll come here and say scale size continuous, and then we pass in the name to be cylinders. Excuse me, it's no longer cylinders, but it's the horse power. So let's run this. Now we have managed to change the name in this legend. Okay, so what we have done now is that we mapped the size of the points to this continuous variable, and now we want to change the name of this legend. Now in order to change the name of this legend, we have to use scale, then we specify the aesthetic, which is size, and we specify that it's continuous. Okay, remember that when we're using the size, it always maps to a continuous variable. Okay, and then when we come in here, we simply just specify the name of this legend. Okay, now what about the range? The range of the size of these points can also be modified when we modify the range argument. So in this case, we only need to specify the lower and upper range using a numeric vector. Now let's see what do I mean by that. So if we come here, right, and now say the range, okay, and then we pass in this numeric vector and say 3 and 6. And if we run this, what you are seeing in this case is that we have managed to modify the lower and upper limits. Okay, now the size of points will only now lie between 3 and 6 only. Okay, so that is the size of points. Remember, we are controlling the size of the points, so they will only lie between 3 and 6. What happens if you come in here, say for example, you say this size of points will lie between 2, let's decrease these numbers, and say 2 and 3. And if you run this, you notice there has been a change in the size of these points. So that is the role of this range argument. We want to control the size of these points. Okay, now let us return to 3 and 6. As you can see, if you change the numbers in this vector that you passed into range argument, the size of these points will change. So in this case, we supplied 3 and 6, then the size of these points will now lie between 3 and 6 only. Right? Now, what about the limits? Remember that we have specified the limits. Okay, in the previous case, we had a vector, but now in this case, we have a continuous variable. So we can come in here and say limits, right? And if we pass in here the vector, say we want it to start from 100, say now we specify this to go to 350. Now what happens if you run this? So now you run this, you are seeing that now the points that you are seeing here now lies between 100 to 350. As you can see here is that ggplot2 is also giving us a warning that it has removed some of the points. Okay, that is because we've specified the limit to lie between 100 and 350. If you can remember is that we also have another argument which is breaks. That argument in this case, it ensures that the labels that are in this legend horsepower, they represent certain midpoints. Now, let us look at how does the argument function. I'm going to clear the contour. So when I come in here, I want to try and remove limits first, and I'm going to say breaks. Okay, now I'm going to pass in these three numeric numbers, okay, and 275. And if you run this, now you see what has breaks done is that it has made sure that this legend will represent certain numbers that we passed into this vector, which is 125, 200, 275. Okay, so do not get confused between limits and breaks. Okay, we can also go ahead and add the labels. Okay, now our labels will represent 125. Let's simply just try to make it simple and say 100, 200, then it's 300. So it's 300, and then come in here and say it's 100. Okay, then it's 200, then it's going to be 300. So let's run this. We have managed to change the labels in our legend. Okay, so labels argument, as usual, it allows us to change or to modify the labels inside the legend. Do not get confused.